Welcome to the Channing Memorial Church Sunday web service. I'm glad you are with us, even though you are on the other side of the screen. This week, as we were coming up onto Mother's Day, I was thinking about my mother and how she guided my sister and me through our life transitions. We were fortunate to have her in our lives until we were in our 60s, so there was a lot of guidance time. Mothers really do affect how we navigate through transitions or threshold moments in our lives. They either set a good foundation of courage or a foundation of timidity as we are growing up. Or in our later years, they can either provide us support or discouragement. Or sometimes they help us through a transition just by naming what has happened to us and that we are now in a new way of living. So today, as we think about mothers, I'm also inviting us to think about how over the years we have moved through threshold moments or transition moments that have made us the person we are today. But first, I'm going to light the flame in our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. I'd like this flame for all of us on the shorelines of life, gathered at thresholds unknown. May the flame of our faith guide us in our decisions through our journey. I want to now welcome Janet Grant to play our prelude for this morning. Arlen Goff has written, "Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers us an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation from what we were and what we are to what we can be. A threshold event takes us from one place to another. A life threshold is an event through which we move that brings us into a new understanding of ourselves and our environment. It is a point of departure or transition from one way of living and acting to a new way of living and acting. Life thresholds are those times when we face a situation and need to make a decision, or we find that we have to pivot in some way from how we are living or what we have been thinking to a new way of being. And after we have made that pivot, we find that our life is forever changed. Threshold events can be traumatic or harrowing, like an accident that leaves lasting damage on our bodies. But it does not have to be that. It can be a common event, but when it occurs in our lives, we have been changed in some way. Like the first time we insisted on paying the restaurant tab when the family went out for dinner. We were changed after we did that. We were sort of proud of ourselves. We were different than we were before we even walked into that restaurant. Now, in the academic world, there is a relatively new line of study called Big History. Big History looks at the flow of time from the Big Bang to the present from a perspective of an integrated history of the cosmos, Earth, life, and humanity, to present an understanding of human existence in the context of a very big picture. In Big History, creation is understood as having passed through 8 fundamental thresholds: origin, stars and galaxies, molecules, Earth, life, development of humans, agriculture, and modern revolution. Each of them is associated with a new form of complexity, and each of which has new properties. Like the story of creation, and thus humans, we have passed through significant thresholds in our formation. We individuals have moved through different thresholds to become who we are at this moment and who we will be in the future. The thresholds described in Big History are distinct periods, but the point when the universe changed is somewhat indeterminate, though there was a time when what was is now something different. And that is how life thresholds often occur for us. There have been times in our lives when we were one way and then we were different, though the exact moment of the change may be hard to pin down. So does becoming an adult happen when you turn a certain age, or move out of your parents' house, or get that first full-time job, or start to do the laundry on your own? But there is a passage, and at some moment we come to realize that things are different for us. We have changed somehow, passing through some developmental moment. And even if there is a sudden event that changes our life, like an accident or a death of a loved one, we may not fully realize our life has changed. It may take a while for us to truly understand that things are different. Therefore, it's probably more accurate to understand life's threshold as philosopher John O'Donohoe described them, as not a simple boundary, but more of a frontier that divides different territories, rhythms, and atmospheres, like the transitional line between 2 geographic features or countries. This is because life's thresholds are not specific events like a line, but rather they have 3 phases that we move through: a beginning, a middle, and an end. The threshold event itself is not the beginning of the transition. Actually, the beginning is where we are at the current point in our lives. The threshold event is in the middle phase. Now, sometimes it is a significant event that hits us out of the blue and dramatic: an accident, a death, the loss of a job. But very often it is not dramatic. We creep up on to what we will eventually know to have been a threshold. The moment when we decided we wanted things to be different, or when we took some specific steps to make a change in our lives, like the time we went for our first full-time job, or started to do our own laundry, or contacted an attorney about filing for a divorce, or submitted an application for a different job. those relatively nondescript, maybe even routine events started the change that marked us as a new person. The third phase of a threshold is when we realize things are different and we are a new person. So what does it mean? What does it mean to say that we are people of thresholds? Now, I think it means, as Amanda Papai, the leader of the Washington, D.C. Ethical Society, once noted, that while we are our full selves for every second, every month, every year of our lives from the beginning, we are also becoming ourselves, growing and stretching. We are always being and becoming, only to be again and become something different again. We come upon and go through thresholds all through our lives that change and alter who we are and how we will live our lives until that final threshold, death. We are not static entities. From the moment of our birth to our death, we will continually move from being someone to being someone slightly different in response to events and decisions. Being people of thresholds also means that in order to live a more calm life, we need to mentally and emotionally and spiritually come to terms with this condition of our life changing. Now, few of us relish the idea of our life changing. Most of us are willing to put up with a lot to avoid making a change. Many people spend a great deal of time and energy trying to sidestep or deny a change. But as surely as the sun rises every morning, a threshold event will happen, and we will have to face the fact that our environment is different, that our lives are different. They are different than at some point in the past. The trick then to getting through life changes and making them less mentally and emotionally painful is to acknowledge that this will happen in the future as things have changed for us in the past. And then, when we come to realize that we have gone through a threshold event, we can make our lives better ultimately by acknowledging things are now different and not trying to live as we did in the past. I know a woman whose husband died. Every Friday she would go out to a restaurant for dinner like she and her husband did. But she told me one time that by the end of the evening she always felt very sad. Her efforts to keep a memory alive by doing what had been done in the past was not helping her, but rather was causing more distress. It was time for her to accept that things had changed forever and start living a new life. And finally, when things have settled, it is important to intentionally take time to reflect on how our life is now, and to be sure that we have a new center or balance for ourselves within our changed personal universe. Whatever your threshold event may be in the future, a new job, retirement, an illness, a death, a new relationship, a new home, becoming a parent or grandparent, I hope that you will allow yourself the grace of self-care and be open to the mystery and blessing of life in whatever form they take on the other side of the transition. We are people of thresholds, always have been, and always will be. So be it. For our time of sharing this morning, I'm lighting this candle with thoughts about us all. Each of us have our joys and sorrows and concerns and moments of gratitude. Life goes on, even as we continue to live through a most unique period of history. Let's take a moment to enjoy the pictures of flowers that have been sent to us by members of the congregation as we listen to Spirit of Life. This Sunday is Mother's Day, and I want to light a candle for mothers. I light this candle to celebrate those who gave birth this year. I light this candle to honor those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and wear the badge of food stain. I light this candle to mourn those who lost a child or miscarried. I light this candle to give thanks to foster moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms. I light this candle to show our grief with you who have lost mothers this year or in years past. I light this candle to recognize those who lived through driving tests, medical tests, finals, temper tantrums, and teen rebellions. I light this candle for stepmoms who walk complex paths. I light this candle for grandmothers who give love and support to their grandchildren and those who are longing to do so. This Mother's Day, we honor and celebrate you, knowing that mothering in all of its forms is not for the faint of heart, and that you are real warriors in our midst. Around this candle that I just lit are a few mementos, a few remembrances of my grandparents and my mother. An antique teapot, an antique plate from my grandparents, and a vase that was a wedding present to my mother. Our Chanting Sunday web services will be here next week. Please join us again and tell your friends to check us out. I would also like to remind you that even though our buildings are closed, the church has expenses. So please keep your pledge payments coming. We recognize that all of us have different financial places at this time, but if possible, please keep your pledges up. And if perhaps you usually put money in the offering plate, please consider sending another check or sending a check to the church as a financial gift, as if we had been passing the offering plate. And I do want to thank all church members who sent pictures of flowers that we use today for our virtual flower ceremony. And finally, I invite you to send a selfie to the church office at channingchurch.org. I plan to incorporate pictures of the congregation in future service videos. Our closing words for this service on Threshold are that Very old Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the rains fall soft on your fields and the sun shine warm upon your face. So be it. Amen.